The core part of our platform is that milestone and projects and connecting that to the strategic direction of the business. And so an individual that is working on these projects and objectives can say, okay, well, what strategic goal is that actually going to achieve?
Welcome to the business behind your business. Conversations to help your business grow and thrive. Hi, I'm Paul Sweeney, founder of Pretium Solutions, chartered accountants and certified business advisors, hosting the business behind your business. Welcome back to the business behind your business. I'm Paul Sweeney, your host. We're looking at another conversation to help your business grow and thrive. And today I'm excited because I have Chris Palmer from Mouse Business Systems on the other end of the microphone. We're going to be looking at how you could be using online tools and processes to really drive that strategic value and growth in your business, and how you can access those tools to really supercharge and become a high-performing business. So, Chris Palmer, welcome to the microphone.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here, and really looking forward to hashing out this very exciting topic a little bit more.
Yeah, fantastic. So Mouse is a bit of a strange name, and there's a bit of history to Mouse. But look, you've been with Mouse for quite some time now. So can you just give us a bit of a background about Mouse and your history with Mouse?
Yeah, you're spot on. So Mouse, spelled M-A-U-S for all of those listening, is a SaaS-based company. Look, we've been around for many, many years now. We're actually established in the early 90s, back in the launch of computers in the desktop age, I think. And Mouse was actually the first ever business planning digital tool. It was actually available on a floppy disk, if you can cast your mind back that far. And obviously, stepping through the generations, Mouse is now a cloud-based SaaS platform used by primarily small to medium businesses, and also utilized by business advisors and consultants to help their clients in the areas of primarily strategic and business planning, but then more importantly, execution. So that's great. We've got the plan. Now, how are we actually going to implement and monitor that? And so my role here, as you mentioned, I've been with the team many years now, just over 7 years actually. And my current role here is director for Mouse for the Asia Pacific region. So we are a multinational company with users in over 20 different countries around the world. And I look after primarily the Australia and New Zealand markets here.
Fantastic. So it is, like I said, it is a tool that's developed, available internationally. So it's a well-recognized system and tool. But I think the key thing here is it's come from, look, you mentioned it's digital, it's SaaS, but it's come from some well-entrenched business processes that have been accepted practice for years, but are now accessible to your small and medium business owner. That's
exactly right. It was built off the back of business consulting. So our original CEO and founder, Peter Hickey, was a business consultant and advisor himself, and was finding that lack of resources to efficiently work with the small to medium businesses, those that don't have the resources for all of these internal people at the larger end of town. And so that's what really initially stemmed him to saying there should be a very simple tool that businesses of all sizes can use to create a strategic plan or a business plan. And then that's obviously developed further and further. And I think one of the unique things with Mouse is it's not just a SaaS company. We have such a wealth of education and methodology behind us that the system's been built upon. And it all follows that set structure. So, yeah, it's a really exciting space to be in.
So I think the key thing here is it's accessible for all business owners. Like we used to think, and look, I was always frustrated as an advisor about the cost of delivering strategic services to help small business owners grow. It was far in excess of their budgets and what they could afford using the tools that we had back then. But it is an accessible and affordable solution. So to me, it makes sense to use it. But I guess the key is, what is the value? Because if we talk about purely business plans, and a lot of business owners think, well, okay, yeah, business plan is that pile of documents that sits on my desk and where I put my coffee cup.
The old dust collector.
The old dust collector. But that's not the case, because there is more to the Mouse product than just the business plan. But you mentioned, I guess the critical thing for me is that this method of execution and implementation.
That's exactly right. So whether you're a startup where it's just an idea, or you're an established business that's scaling, the way in which we need to follow that process is much the same. We need to have that clear strategic direction, and we need to follow those steps to implement and execute. Now, of course, those objectives are very different, whether I'm a startup or an established organization. But in theory, the process which we need to follow is much the same. And so that's where, with our platform, yes, you can create the traditional business planning tool. And when I use the term business plan, people will sit there and shudder at the idea of creating this old 30, 40-page report that sits there and then doesn't do a whole lot. And that really was the norm. And as you mentioned, it was a very expensive or time-consuming process for business owners. It was either we need someone to come in and it's quite an expensive one-off process, or it's we need to go and try and find a tool, or we try and piecemeal it together through online templates and little Word documents that we might find, or things that we had from how to create a business plan going through university or whatever it might have been. But the problem then again is we still just end up with that document. We end up with that document that sits there and says, this is the business planning for company ABC. But then what? And so that then what is really the core piece of Mouse. So we start with the strategic planning component. That's fine. So that takes you through a very step-by-step process of what's required in a strategic plan. But the latter part of that is purely based around the action plan. So that's great. You've got these goals, these aspirations, these targets. Now let's break that down into what we're actually going to do. So what are the big strategic goals? And what are those itemized actions to achieve those goals? So it might be that we wanted to launch a new product. Well, that's great. But if we approach it as launch a new product, that'll sit there on the shelf and we don't really know where to start and who's accountable and when it's due. But if we break that down in terms of, okay, well, someone's got to source the supplier, someone's going to come up with the pricing model, someone's got to develop the marketing for it, who's accountable for that, when's that due? We now have a roadmap. And that's the second part of the strategic plan within Mouse, to create that actual implementable roadmap.
Yeah, I like the way you presented the order there, Chris, because a lot of people think, oh, I've got all of these things to do. That's my plan. And their plan is essentially a very long to-do list without any structure, without any thought process or order or priority. But by putting your strategic plan first, that helps to guide what are the next actions you need to work on. And I think one of the other parts of the tool, which I really like, is this whole idea of the goals and milestones of the business, which tie into your action plan.
Exactly right. And that's where the cliche term comes to mind of working on the business, not in the business. Because exactly right, the day-to-day tasks are what people focus on, and that's their busy work. And they go, yep, we're busy, we're doing this. But does that align with the strategic direction of this company? Have you reevaluated what that is since you established this business? Have you reevaluated who that target market is? What are the customer needs? And so that doesn't have to be a laborious process, but it might be just once a year, we revisit it, we create the new strategic plan, we realign the goals and the actions, and we make sure we're on the right trajectory. And that's where I think people like yourself acting as the advisor as well is such an invaluable component, coming in and telling those business owners to lift their head up and look at that bigger picture, because it's twofold. I think, yes, systems plays a great process in terms of enabling them and giving them access to such resources, but then also being accountable to someone is such a critical component. And that's where I think, especially off the back of what we've seen in the last 2 years, where business owners are really looking for that external source of whether it be just a sounding board or that person to give them the direction. And that's where I think, firms like yourself are offering such a great resource there.
Mm-hmm. So look, the best results are achieved with working with an advisor, because they've got the expertise in advising businesses. Look, they're not the expert in your particular style of business or your business particularly, but they do have the experience in advising a range of businesses and the experience there. But I think the beauty of the tool for small business owners is that you can actually take that tool, implement the strategy for your business without having to go and use an advisor. I think using an advisor is the best case, but what's often the best case is not always what's practical. But the tools and the support provided actually enable a business owner to have a lot more power and effectiveness in designing their strategy.
Well, I think even as well just clarity. And I think we've entered into this age where there's solution overload. There's so many things that are thrown at business saying you need to be using this, and it is overwhelming. I know we internally review what we're using, because you just end up with all of these different components. And that's where I think that big point of difference for us as Mouse is we understand that full well, that there are all these tools. So that's why for small to medium businesses, if we can create this one strategic planning and execution platform that governs a lot of those core areas, which traditionally would have been a number of different tools and systems, and trying to connect those is near impossible. So that's why within the platform, we create that strategic plan, we create that action plan and that roadmap, but then it's also how we measure it. So then within the platform, also we can link that through to our financial and non-financial performance. So there's a KPI component and dashboard in there where we can link that in from the likes of your Xeros and your QuickBooks and have this really nice interactive dashboard where we can look at, okay, well, we've got the strategic plan to one side and we've got the tasks and actions that we need to be ticking off to achieve that. But then beside that, what are those monthly metrics that we need to be working towards? So whether that be a financial metric such as revenue, or whether that be a marketing type metric such as how many new leads did we get this month? These are all critically important, but how are we measuring those and how are we keeping track of those? So that's where we really then flow from that strategic plan into that execution and that accountability, being the tasks and the actions and the KPIs and the metric. And then what we want to see is how is that impacting the business, whether that be the growth or the value of the business. And that's where we've seen this idea starting to come through over the last number of years. And look, other markets such as the US are very advanced in this space, and it's starting to happen here where that idea of exit and succession planning is starting to become something that business owners are aware of, but we're still very much in its infancy. And there's firms, again, like yourself, that are actually prompting those conversations with business owners, which I think is critical, because it's all well and good for us to be creating this business and following this strategic direction and looking at our performance. But how is that impacting the value of this business? And if there is, what does that exit timeframe and exit pathway look like? Because we need to also remember an exit event, whether voluntary or involuntary, is going to happen. So whether that's we planned for it and it's 15 years down the track and that's when we retire, well, that's great. That's the best case scenario. And we've taken the applicable steps. But you've also got involuntary exit where something occurs and we need to rapidly get out of this business. So that idea of I don't need to think about business value and exit planning until I'm ready to sell, I think is a very narrow-sighted model. I think it needs to be the crux of how the business is operating. And it might sound technical when we talk about exit planning and succession planning, but when we break it down, it's very simplistic. It's simply, is the business operating in a systemized, structured, automated manner? And have we removed that reliance purely upon said business owner? So if they are to transition out, is that business still capable of running? That's really what we're talking about when we talk about exit planning. And so that's why in the platform as well, you've got a key component that's centered around that idea of exit planning. We talk about business attractiveness. So there's a very simple diagnostic that the business owner goes through to say, is my business attractive? And then secondly, am I ready? So business readiness. And that's where we talk about all the different components that a potential buyer or investor would look at. And so before they come in with their checkboard and they cross all these things off or put the red lines through the issues, we've already identified those and we've been working on those for the last number of years. So I think that's such a critical step as well. So if we were to sort of break down the platform, you really go from that strategic planning into the execution, into the performance management from the KPIs and the financials, and then through to how does that affect business value and growth. You've got this really nice sequential pathway to follow.
Yeah, and I think that's the strategy. Look, a lot of people tell me that they don't want to exit from their business or they're not going to. But the other way I think people or business owners particularly should look at that is that the idea of going into business is to create a business, not a job. Now, so many business owners still have, after many years, a business that depends on them being there and making all the decisions. So one of the ideas of getting your business ready for exit is that somebody can come in and take over. Now, at the same time, the process of getting your business ready for exit is the same process of getting your business ready for you not to be there. So it can operate profitably, in fact, even more profitably without you being there. It probably will operate more profitably without some business owners. Yeah. But the whole idea is that you create a business that works without you, that doesn't rely on you. And the process of getting to an exit-ready business is much the same as getting to a process of having a business that doesn't rely on you.
Yeah, and that's where I think systems and processes plays the most critical role there. Yes, we can have the right team in place, the management structure in place that can look at taking the reins, but still we need to look at the day-to-day operations of the business. So if we've got that strategic plan mapped out, we've got the action plan defined over the next 12, 24 months of all the big action items that we need to be achieving. We've got the day-to-day metrics of what this company should be achieving from a KPI mentality. We've also then implemented into our platform the idea of policy management and procedures. So do we need that handbook, that guide that says this is how the business runs day to day? So do we have this is how we treat the use of basic things such as company financials or credit cards, how we treat basic HR issues for the team. So that's why inside the platform, you've got a policy management component, and we provide templates regarding operational policies, HR policies. And then we actually have a sister brand, which also does a lot of the ISO documentation. So your health and safety, your QA, and that sort of thing as well, because it's great to have those strategies in place, but also then having the actual documentation and procedures of how the business runs is another very critical step. And if we do talk about that exit event, that's a big component. Is there a guide here of how we're actually going to run this business when we acquire it? And is that documented? So again, that is seen. If I was to say to you right now, write a suite of policy and procedures of how you run your business, you'd glaze over and you'd say, well, that's going to take me a month.
Absolutely.
Which it would. But that's where if you can load in a template that gets you at least the checkbox of everything we need to cover, there's already samples throughout the whole thing. We then just go over the top and make sure it's applicable to that organization. Then we're speeding up that process of, again, what typically has been a very laborious task.
Now, I guess the other side of having all your policies and processes documented is when you're onboarding a new employee into your business. If you've already got those processes and systems and procedures documented, it's so much easier for a new employee to get up to speed very quickly, not just so that they're effective and profitable, but when you're onboarding an employee, the time that you are actually having to spend with them training, the longer that takes, the more it takes you away from your income-producing activities or your time working on the business. So there's a double edge.
Well, exactly bonus. Right. Onboarding takes out a minimum of 2 resources because you've got the person that's training and the new individual. And so if there are components there that they can be achieving in a self-paced manner and they can be reading through those documents and those onboarding procedures, that's hugely beneficial. And so again, when we talk about that accessibility, like we did at the start, where previously these things were for the bigger end of town, it doesn't need to be. And again, we're not talking about all these different tools. So you can very easily create an onboarding folder in that documentation that can be provided to a new employee that comes on board. We get a little bit more sophisticated. We even have things like employee compliance. So from within the system, I can sign off and say, okay, well, Jenny, who just joined our team, she's gone through the induction process and she's read and acknowledged these documents. And we've got that as also not a binding document, but a document we can see and we can actually have evidence of compliance, which I think is also quite an important step.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the other tie-in, and this is a feature that I really love, is the whole idea of having your goals and milestones of your projects with tasks assigned to your employees, and that's in a dashboard checklist where you can actually meet with each employee on a regular basis. And look, we recommend weekly because that's what works really well for us, because we get good visibility about what the employee has done and where they're up to and what issues they're having, so we can identify and fix those. And it's a bit like your weekly stand-ups or your progress production meetings, but we've got a very clear process about the goals and the milestone activities which tie back to your strategy, which each employee is working on. So you've got that accountability about what's going on with the project. So sometimes in our business, we're not just focusing on the day-to-day, but we're focusing on the projects that are actually going to drive future value and future profit.
And I think the other great thing there as well is we get that involvement and that accountability from our general team, and that they are the biggest part of achieving our strategic direction for the organization. So again, gone are the days of we've got the key exec team up the top and they are the ones that look at this business plan and then the team are just told to do these tasks and projects without any real context. No, visualize that all together. Get them involved in this process. Look at what that roadmap for the business is. And that's why we've seen a great initiative over the last number of years called OKR, so Objectives and Key Results. And that is a core part of our platform, is that milestone and projects and connecting that to the strategic direction of the business. And so an individual that is working on these projects and objectives can say, okay, well, what strategic goal is that actually going to achieve? So, these tasks and projects that I'm working on are a big part of launching this new product. And launching this new product is a big part of the strategic goal that we've got to achieve for this year. And so I see that ownership and I see that drive. And as you said, that's where we extend it down to the general people within the organization. So with the platform, historically, yes, we saw the business owners and the managers, but now we're really starting to see all of the team members using this platform. And that's where they can have those tasks and actions assigned to them, but also from a performance management perspective. And if they're having that weekly one-to-one with their manager, the KPI component, yes, can be company level KPIs, but it can also be divisional or personal. So I myself, for instance, have my own KPI dashboard of what are my key metrics that I'm working towards each month, and what are my targets, and what am I trying to achieve. And then I catch up with my manager and we review what's going well, what's not going so well, any positive or negative trends that we can see and we can maybe forecast for. And it creates this really nice dashboard showing that traffic light report. So it highlights and it screams out at you if there's any issues, positive or negative, that we need to be aware of. So I think, seeing that internal buy-in to the strategic plan is so critically important. And I think the use of a system makes that so much simpler. Rather than saying, guys, this is what we're going to achieve this year, to actually saying, hey, here it is. We can see it visually, and here's how it's broken down and how we're all working towards that goal. Just creates so much more buy-in within the team.
Are you creating the buy-in, you're creating that ownership and accountability, but you're also putting in place the actual steps to achieve those big goals, those big objectives. You're creating those individual steps. And look, my experience advising clients is that when we break those big goals down to each step or milestone in the project, it's a lot easier to tick off when you've actually achieved part of it. And then you've also got this process of encouraging the wins, because each time you mark off a stage of the project, there's a bit of a celebration there that you've actually achieved something. You're moving forward, and people can see that in a tangible way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's visualizing that data, and again, we're not necessarily changing the way people are operating. We're simply visualizing it and systemizing it. So what previously everyone has tasks and actions they're working on, but is that clearly defined? Is there a roadmap of when we're working? Is there an order of how we're working those? Is there a celebration of when we are achieving them and seeing that recognition? And so again, having that in place, having that dashboard where we can see what's in front of us and what's behind us and what we've completed is such a simplistic step to take to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. So we started as a business planning tool, but we've created, Mouse has created a platform which has so much more to it. I'm using the collective we because I embrace the tool and I use it.
But I think that we is probably a really good term to use there. And as cliche as this may sound, I think so. With Mouse, obviously we've got our customers. We don't typically like to use the word users who use our platform day to day. But then we have our Mouse partners, and our partner firms are firms like yourself. And we have those firms now all around the world, and we've got around 80 partner firms. And when we talk about these firms, these are business advisors, business consultants, business coaches who are all out there on the ground level working with these businesses. And so, again, rather than us as a SaaS provider sitting back and just thinking we've got the model correct, we actually really lean upon people like yourself for that feedback of, this is how I work with my client. This is how we help businesses. And we then look at that and say, okay, is that achievable within Mouse? Have we made that an easy process for you and the client within the platform? And so I think that we is critical. I think having that feedback of how you're actually working with these businesses and what's important to them and making sure that's emulated within the system is such an important step.
We certainly value the network of advisors and the feedback on what works, but not so much what works, but how they're using the tools to actually help their clients and help business owners achieve great outcomes. Look, if there was one area to focus on, or one tool that's really going to help you, kick some goals and become more efficient or more profitable, what's the one thing that you would encourage business owners to focus on?
I think it is going back to the basics, in a sense, of that strategic planning piece, and really looking at that in terms of, is that up to date and specific with our organization? So everyone will go, yeah, we've got a business plan. Is that up in your head? Is that documented? When was the last time that was actually reviewed? What are the action items and outcomes from that? 99% of businesses wouldn't be able to show you that. They might be able to run you through their plan. Can they document that and show it to you? Is there an action plan? No. The vast majority are not doing the basics. And so I think it's really going back to the basics and then following those steps. So I would say the key step for us, and that's where, again, the vast majority of our clients start, is with the strategic plan. Very few come in and skip that part of our system and go, we've already got that in place, we're just going to go straight through to KPIs and financial reporting, or go through and talk about exit planning. The vast majority start at that starting point of strategic planning. So I think that would be the biggest component, is getting that in place, but not just doing it so we've got that printable Word document at the end that shows a business plan. I think the critical piece of that is the outcomes. Have we now got a roadmap of what we need to achieve over the next period of time, and does that relate back to the plan and the strategic goals for the company?
Great, fantastic, Chris. That's some great stuff that you shared with us, and I'd really encourage people to check out the Mouse suite of tools. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, super easy. So if you head to Mouse, and that is MAUS, mouse.com, that is our new and improved look and branding, and our new website, which has just gone up recently. From there, whether you're a business advisor or a business owner or a manager or a member of a team looking for these sort of systems, from there you can have a free trial and play around with it. You can inquire and reach out to the team. Our team, whether you're dealing with our Australian office or our US office, are fantastic. They'll spend the time really going through the systems with you, really evaluating, is this the right sort of tool for what you need, and really looking at what your outcomes are and what you want to achieve from the platform. So I would encourage all businesses to head to that website, and also follow us on our LinkedIn channel. You'll see a lot of updates and great free resources through there as well.
Great, fantastic. So we'll put links to the Mouse website and their LinkedIn in the show notes, which will be available for you. And Chris, if our listeners want to contact you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
Easy done. So you can give our office a call and reach through to me. So our Australian number is 0299071996. Otherwise, feel free to email me directly. You can email me at cpalmer, which is PALMER, at mouse.com, and mouse is MAUS.
Great, fantastic. So thank you, Chris, for sharing another conversation about how to help business owners grow and thrive. And look, if you're a business owner listening, or you know a business owner that should be listening, please share this episode with them and encourage them to subscribe or follow using their favorite podcast player, and listening to more conversations to help small business owners create great businesses. So thank you again, Chris, for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
No, and thank you very much. And again, thank you for this initiative, the business behind your business and everything you're looking to achieve there. To provide that support for small to medium businesses is fantastic. And obviously, the services that you provide and a lot of our partners provide in terms of that hands-on component. Obviously, we have a lot of businesses that come through that use these tools, but they just need that greater hands-on assistance to really implement and drive that business forward and be accountable. That's where I think the idea of the business advisor working with you, the business coach working with you, is such a critical step. And I think probably what you've seen there is it is really that accountability driver. It's that person that can come in once a month or once a quarter and say, okay, where are we at? Are we achieving the goals that we set out to achieve? And they are accountable, because a lot of the time the business owner isn't necessarily accountable to anyone. And so the projects fall off, the direction falls off. And so this is a great step to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, fantastic. Yep, great advice there, Chris, and thank you. Yeah, we love helping small, medium business owners, and that's why we're here. So thank you, Chris, and we look forward to more of our listeners having a look at the Mouse tools and using them to create great businesses. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks very much, Paul. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Do you have a question you'd like our team of experts to answer? If you do, send your question to podcast@thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. To hear more from The Business Behind Your Business, don't forget to subscribe using your favourite podcast player. Or you can visit the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website.